Welcome to the latest in our, it seems like a hardy perennial series now. It's been running for so long, entitled So You Think You Can Be Mayor of London. And joining me today is Sian Berry. She is the Green Party's candidate for London Mayor. So unlike the other candidates we spoke to, they were all hoping to be candidates, but she actually is the candidate. She's been chosen as the Green Party candidate for London Mayor. Sian, welcome. Welcome to the programme.
Thank you for having me on.
Okay, now you arrived by bike. Mm-hmm. You were late because it was so difficult to park your bike.
You need more bike parking at
You need more
broadcasting.
bike parking. But it's about bike parking. So you may say that that's a great triumph for the Greens already. There are so many bikes that we haven't got anywhere to park them. That's good, isn't it? Is that progress?
I think that's right. Cycling's more than doubled recently in London. I mean, from a very low base, but people are really getting on their bikes a lot more than they used to. And there are now policies emerging to encourage that, to make it safer for people. So
yes.
I certainly cycle slightly more journeys than I used to because I have more segregated routes. Once we get the new ones in central London, I'll be cycling almost everywhere.
Which are the ones you're looking forward to?
The ones along Embankment, because at the moment Westminster
Borough, you know, these are
is
highly
awful.
controversial, don't you? Lots of people don't like those at all.
I'm very confident that traffic isn't going to be affected by those, and that actually it'll be a real boost to reducing congestion in central London, because more people will get on their bikes and cycle to Westminster, which is really difficult.
So you
at the
arrived
moment.
looking frustrated because you were late because you couldn't park your bike, but actually on reflection you're rather pleased you couldn't park your bike.
In a way, that's it. It's a good sign of things, and but yeah, we do need more bike parking, and the BBC should.
So let me ask you the time-honoured first question. So you think you can be Mayor of London? You obviously think so, or you wouldn't be here. The Green Party obviously have every confidence you knew, or you wouldn't be their candidate. Why is it that you think you can be Mayor of London?
Well, I mean, I'm standing on the shoulders of giants here. We've had Jenny Jones and Darren Johnson in the London Assembly for the past 16 years. It'll be by the time they retire next year. They had a casting vote over Mayor Ken Livingstone's budget from 2004 to 2008, and they did fantastic things with it.
What did they do?
Well, they won a tripling of the cycling budget. The budget for green energy was down at something like £100,000, and they got it up to millions. We managed to get the living wage unit instituted, and now living wage is the absolute policy that everybody espouses.
That's certainly true.
Back in 2001, when we first started talking about it, it wasn't. It was a new concept, and so we've led the way in lots of ways in London, and I think we are ready to be more in charge, to have a stronger mandate to do more.
I mean, you do realise, with the greatest respect, that when you said I'm standing on the shoulders of giants, you didn't necessarily reel off a couple of household names. You know, there are going to be, I don't know what proportion of my lovely listeners who've never heard of either of the people that you just mentioned there. Obviously, there's going to be some people who are great fans of theirs and think they're absolutely terrific, Jenny Jones and Darren Johnson, but some people are going to be thinking, sorry, what? Did I miss something? Who's she talking about?
Well, I mean, London's governance is odd because everything seems to be concentrated on the mayor. So it is, I mean, my job as candidate for mayor is going to be very important. I need to be the focus of the campaign. I need to try and break in to the debates, although we came third last time, so there shouldn't be any problem with being in the debates. But I need to make my mark as a candidate for mayor as well, because all the good work that goes on in the London Assembly, as you say, is not the focus of the media. People don't particularly notice it. It's quiet, good work that they've been doing for 16 years.
All right. So I've asked, so you think you can be Mayor of London? You immediately did that thing that people often do, and I don't want to be in any way sexist, but often it's women that do it, which is say, well, you know, I'm hardly anything really. Let me immediately put focus on Jenny Jones and Darren Johnson. Look at the fantastic work that they have done. And of course, I didn't ask about them. I asked about you. Nobody listening here really wants to know about them, except maybe their parents, who might like to hear that they're tremendous. We want to hear about you. And so you think you can be Mayor of London. You said, well, I'm standing on great shoulders here. Okay, we get that. You're obviously going to be self-deprecating, obviously not an egomaniac. Maybe people will warm to that. But people will not be any the wiser about you at all from what you've said so far.
No,
I'm going to change it for your benefit. Instead of so you think you can be Mayor of London, let me ask you this in a more confrontational way. Why do you think you should be Mayor of London? And I'm not talking about your predecessors or people you admire. I'm talking about you.
Well, I do have a record in this as well. I stood in 2008. This was the first contest where Boris and Ken fought against each other. I had a very hard job then. We had been 7th the time before. I fought my way up into the top 4. The Evening Standard had me down as one of the main candidates. 2 national newspapers said that people should vote for us first and Ken Livingstone second. So I've got a record there of fighting a good campaign, and I've been a campaigner since then as well. I work as a transport campaigner. I've worked for a charity called Campaign for Better Transport. I fight for more sustainable transport. I argue against bigger roads and for cycling and things like that. Technically, I know my stuff when it comes to transport. So, and that's really like number one qualification for being mayor in lots of ways. It's one of the most complex things that the mayor has to do and have a good handle on, and I do. So those are my two main qualifications.
So one of the things that people might be concerned about with you, Sian, is that you're obviously a transport expert, and that is your area of passion and expertise. And you've talked about cycling, and we know you cycled here. You talked about how great it's going to be when all the cycling gets sorted out in central London. We've heard the word cycle a few times. What about the other things that are part of the mayor's remit? I mean, are you able to get enthusiastic about those, and do you know anything much about them?
Well, our absolute focus for this election actually is housing, and I'm a local councillor in Camden, and as a local councillor I see families all the time. They come to me, they're crushed, like all four of them are living in one room. They don't understand why there isn't somewhere for them to move to. Meanwhile, we have towers going up all over London that are luxury flats. They're bought as investments, as second homes. They're available for basically no one to live in except at extortionate rents. So that is going to be the focus of the Green Party campaign.
And what would the Green Party do to stop that?
Well, the one policy I've launched so far, the theme of our election is going to be giving power back to the people, and the policy we've launched so far is to put a unit in City Hall to support people in estates that are going to be regenerated, to give them the expertise to put forwards well worked out viable alternative plans, because at the moment big developers will get together with councils, they'll put together plans, they won't show us the numbers, they'll say it's not viable to put more than 10-20% affordable housing in there, but local residents do know better. They can fit homes into those spaces, they can do it in a way that gives more social housing, and if we give them the expertise via City Hall, we think they can put together proposals that will fly, that the councils and the developers will be happy to build, because the uncertainty, the opposition will have been removed.
And as mayor for the Green Party, should you get elected, would you be building more housing in London?
Absolutely. I think we have to fight every step of the way to get more money out of central government to enable more social housing to be built. I think there are other ways of raising money as well, and I think, as I say, I think developers can be persuaded to put more social housing into areas and developments. It takes a strong line, it takes political will to make that happen, but at the moment they're taking away 20-25% profits. If we could get them down to 15%, which actually is an enormous return on an investment if you compare it to other things, we can strike harder deals with people, and it's our land. Once it's been built on, Londoners have lost it. It's gone, and we have to make sure we get every drop of new housing that we need out of these areas. So
I'm here with Sian Berry. She's the Green Party's candidate for London Mayor, and she's available to take your calls. The number 0207 224 2000, 0207 224 2000. Interesting that you said, the theme for this campaign, the theme. And what did you say the theme was? Power to the people. Yeah, because like I said before, everything seems to be concentrated in the powers of the mayor. And I think what a Green mayor would do is, you can't disavow the powers themselves, but the way you make decisions, that you can go out and ask the people, give them more say over what goes on, and there'll be a whole range of different policies where we'll be empowering people to take control of their own areas, their own lives. What else apart from their housing? Energy supply. We're thinking about, for example, a tenants union for people who privately rent. I'm thinking of forming a brand new union. Helping one to be formed, using resources at City Hall to get that set up. Tenants are often very exploited by landlords. They don't have the collective power that maybe some social housing tenants do with so this would be making history, wouldn't it? With the Mayor of London to help form unions. That's never been the mayor's remit before. Well, helping people stand up for themselves. That's the whole point. That's our philosophy. Decisions should be made at the right level. People should be empowered to influence things. Power to the people is a fabulous phrase. But if you sat here for 5 minutes, and I'm sure in your role as councillor and everything else you do, you will know that the people are not a homogenous unit. The people want a whole lot of different stuff. That guy over there wants, a runway at Heathrow. That guy over there passionately doesn't want it. This guy wants more cycle lanes. This guy can't stand cyclists and would willingly run them over if he could. This guy wants more stop and search. This guy wants less stop and search. This is if they didn't, I wouldn't have a programme. Everyone would agree there'd be consensus, and we could say power to the people. This is what everybody wants. And often it's very difficult, whoever you are, to predict what people want. Look what everybody said about Corbyn when his name first came forward. Look what people said about UKIP when Nigel Farage rose to prominence. Nobody knows what's going to happen, it seems. So I'm worried about power to the people because I'm worried that it's meaningless. And what's the point wasting your time on something that means nothing?
Well, I mean, you're touching on something quite interesting there. The way that more and more people are becoming involved in politics. We started off in Scotland with the enormous turnout in the independence referendum, the growth of the Scottish National Party up there. Then we had the Green Surge. We've quadrupled our membership in the past year or two, which has been extraordinary for us. And now so many people joining Labour. I mean, this is people wanting more power, wanting more say in what goes on. And I think, my philosophy, the Green philosophy, is about democracy and people being able to make decisions. We trust the people. The people who are getting active now are fighting for a better world, and we want to give them more agency in how that goes in London.
But you trust only some of the people, those who agree with what you want?
Well, I think if you go about making decisions in the right way. So, for example, on this is going out of London now, but on electoral reform, which is absolutely needed now. We've just had the most disproportionate election in history. The thing to do there is to put together a big people's constitutional convention to go around the country, have people, like happened in Scotland, debating what the future of the country should look like. What should our democracy be?
What do you think the future of the country should look like?
Well, I would love to see electoral reform to give votes to people at a younger age. I want to see more proportional representation, and the Lords is so outdated it's untrue and needs radical reform. But I mean, that's what I would go to a constitutional convention and argue for.
And
but
how would a green London look if we were to elect you mayor and you were to become London's first green mayor? What would you do that would change the face of London, the air of London, the vibe of London? I mean, how would you seek to influence it?
I think at the end of a Green mayoralty, people would feel more confident in the city. At the moment, it feels like, especially, I just criticised Boris Johnson for a moment, that there doesn't seem to be a vision for London under Boris Johnson. There's lots of eye-catching initiatives, but they don't all seem to add up to anything in particular. And I think with the Green in charge, you would see that. We are very consistent. We're a principled party. We want to see a more sustainable economy. We want to see...
What does that mean? And what does a more sustainable economy mean?
Well, it means, getting investments out of fossil fuels, which are running out anyway, and a terrible investment, investing more in new green industries where there are lots more jobs. It means reducing inequality so that people at the lower end have a living wage and we don't see such enormous salaries at the top end. It means more equality between the sexes. We want to see more women able to work. I mean, at the moment, part-time female workers are the worst paid across London. In Camden, we've had an amazing campaign of the school dinner ladies, and it affects me quite a lot. My sister used to work as a school dinner lady before she retrained and became a teaching assistant. And those dinner ladies they were being paid below the living wage. They were being paid £2.50 less than their counterparts in another council because the contracts weren't right. They joined a union, they lobbied the council in the most passionate way, and now they've won. This September they are now receiving a living wage. And I think, Londoners all around at the end of a Green mayoralty should feel like they can influence things in the way those dinner ladies did, in the way that the housing campaigners on estates are doing, and that someone is listening to them in City Hall. I don't think there should be anyone in London who feels like a Green mayor is not listening to them. I've been talking to small businesses and taxi drivers in recent weeks about what they want, and I'm listening hard to them as well, and our interests overlap. The taxi drivers know they have to move to cleaner vehicles. They know that it's not going to be easy for them to do that the new vehicles are very expensive, and they need help from the mayor to do that. And I think it's the least a mayor can do is listen and provide that help.
Where do you stand on the Uber debacle?
I'm not sure about Uber at the moment. I'm very sceptical about particularly that it might be taking journeys away from public transport. We missed our targets for public transport fares last year. And that's a serious worry if you're the mayor, because that means that there's less money available for investment in new services. And I do worry. In New York, Uber has been going for longer, and there is strong evidence there that they are taking journeys away from public transport in New York and increasing traffic. And in London, that would be a really, really bad thing to happen. We need less traffic.
So I'm here with Sian Berry. She is the Green Party candidate for London Mayor. The number, if you want to have a word with her, 0207 224 2000. Maybe to you, it would be a veritable heaven on earth, paradisial to have a Green Mayor in charge of London. Maybe you can't get over the idea of the Green Party as outsiders. You can't take them seriously. You don't like the thought. of a Green Mayor in charge of London. What is your take on this? Sian Berry is here with me. We're going to be finding out, where she lives in London, where she likes to go in London, what London really means to her. And you can certainly speak to her if you want to. 0207 224 2000. We'll be back with her straight after this trail.
BBC London 94.9 at the weekend.
Music. Great music.
What do you want to hear?
It's Aretha Franklin's Jump to It. Cheers, Tony.
Chat.
Jeffrey Daniel is here with me right now.
Tony, thank you very much for having me.
Nonsense.
The Queen came and she shook our hands.
Not on roller
and
skates.
Prince Philip. Oh, the Queen wasn't skates.
Me.
I can't believe I'm talking to you.
No, it's a thrill for you, I know.
Is what makes Sunday on BBC London 94.9 so memorable.
Tony Blackburn's Soul on Sunday.
So make yours a memorable Sunday too.
And the first thing we said was, rock the boat, don't rock the boat, baby. How's your fishing doing?
You should have said, how's your tackle?
3 hours of me. Great soul music, studio guests, your soul requests, and me.
Why can't we be lovers?
Well, there's an obvious reason for that, Alan.
I can't be more modest than that.
Sundays from midday.
Which airport needs expansion, do you think?
No airports need expansion. I can talk about that. That's good fun.
No, go on, talk about it. We're on air. No airports need expansion?
No airports need expansion. Essentially, what we have is growth in air travel that is entirely driven by leisure travel. If you look at business flights, they've levelled off. We don't need the new capacity for business flights, and we don't need it for the people taking like one holiday a year. Most people in a year will not travel. 48% of people will take a flight. Those who take a flight will take one flight in the large part. Most of the growth in air travel is people travelling abroad on a regular basis, but to a second home. And the really interesting thing about this, if you look at the statistics and where
Really? Most of the air travel is people travelling to a second home?
most of the
Where
growth
did
in
you get
air
that
travel,
from?
most of the growth in air travel is from people travelling to a second home. People
So
taking
it's not business use, it's not industrial use, it's not export use,
business-
it's people travelling to us. How do you work
business
that one
travel
out?
is not growing. Unless
Seems extraordinary. That's the absolute opposite of what everybody else has said. You know that.
It is, and it's interesting that the arguments for airport expansion are focusing on that when it's simply not true. Businesses don't like to waste people's time travelling when they don't need to, so things like video conferencing have really helped to lead to a levelling off in
What's the
business
total
flights.
number of people who have a second home abroad? I mean, that can't be right.
No,
can
and
it?
exactly, but they take an awful lot of flights, and then so they're responsible for an awful lot of the growth in
So
flights.
what would you do to stop them doing that?
Well, it wouldn't expand the airports. But also, there's a really good campaign and proposal out there called afreeride.org, and it's a reform of air passenger duty. And at the moment, everyone pays air passenger duty. What this would do is remove it from the first flight that you take, which would be almost all the flights taken by almost all the people would not be affected then. But then as you take more and more flights, the air passenger duty would increase gradually, so that by the time you're taking your 10th flight, the duty is something like £300.
And that means you're easing all the budget airlines out of business, aren't you? Because everyone who wants to go on a hen
No,
party
because
to
you're cutting-
Stuttgart, and everyone who wants to go to Dublin for the weekend, and everybody wants to go, on a cheap,
You're
easy
cutting
jet
the
to
tax
Florence.
for the vast majority of people. That's the thing. If you look at the actual you do the modelling, and the modelling's been done by a new economics foundation, you find that the vast majority of people have a cut in tax under that system, and all it does is dampen down the demand. And then you can say with confidence there needs to be no airport expansion, and we can't keep expanding airports and flying more because it will leave no carbon emissions left for the rest of our lives. All the carbon emission target figures will be taken up by flying if that's what we do.
And on the line is Clint in Victoria. Hello, Clint. You're on the line to Sian Berry.
Good morning, darling. How are you?
Good morning. Nice to speak to you.
And to you. I'm a cab driver, Don. I won't go into the Uber thing too much. I don't want to discuss that. What I want to discuss is you're saying about the taxis coming up to the standards of zero emissions. And would you, as the mayor, help the cab drivers to gain that? I mean, like, would it be possible to say, right, your vehicle's got to be a hybrid vehicle, a hybrid taxi? Would you help in that, by subsidising it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's the Clean Air in London campaign. This is all about air pollution because we've got the dirtiest air in the country, in London, and nearly 10,000 people a year die from the dirty air. So we have to do something. And the Clean Air in London campaign has worked with the taxi drivers to put together an 8-point proposal, including help for the taxi drivers, a scrappage incentive, and all those kinds of things. And I'm signed up to that. So yes, you will get the help that you need.
Is that the right answer, Clint?
Yeah, but why can't now this mayor and the mayors before listen to what people are saying. Look, if you've got a bus that can run on green hybrid, why is it taking so long to develop one for a cab? Why can't I have a cab that starts up on petrol and then kicks in to the hybrid? Why can't it be done now? Why are we waiting and say, well, look, we're developing one in a couple of years, this is how much it's going to cost? Why isn't it being done now? If you're that worried about your clean air, which I am as well, why isn't it happening now?
I completely agree with you. It's taken far too long for the main taxi manufacturers because we have very strict turning circle requirements, which means only certain vehicles can be used as cabs. It's taken far too long for one to come forwards, but there is a good model now coming in. It's extended range vehicle, so it runs mainly on its battery, and a little small engine, a petrol engine, will kick in and recharge the battery when needed. So basically, it's running zero emissions all the way through town, and that's going to help a lot towards our air. But yeah, you're right. It's taken far too long for this to happen. We've had this technology
Thank you. I'm
for
sorry
years.
to interrupt you, but others we're going to run out of time. So let me ask you a few things. Where do you live in London?
I live in Tufnell Park. I'm a councillor in Camden.
And do we need to know anything about your family setup and that kind of thing, your relationships and what's going on with that kind of stuff?
You can ask. I live with a little cat called Archie.
A little cat called Archie. Okay, delightful. Now I'm gonna fling some quick fire questions at you. The first is London cab or public? I think we know the answer to this one. London cab or public transport?
Public transport.
Fish and chips or pie and mash?
Fish and chips.
Night on the town or day in the park?
Park.
Which park?
Waterloo Park in my ward.
Oh, that's a lovely one. The Globe or the Roundhouse?
Ooh, Roundhouse.
Why?
Because it's a spectacular building, the industrialness of it.
And North London or South London?
Tricky. I'm from North London. That's where I live. But South London is, it's a wonderful place. So, yeah, both. I'm there for all of London.
And final question, because I have asked all the other candidates this. Boris and Ken, both, one name people. We know them instantly. They're recognisable. They suit cartoons. You know who they are. There's a kind of shorthand and a kind of star quality and USP to both of them, whether you admire or agree with their politics or not. Do you think you have that kind of personality, that kind of character to be an easily identifiable big personality mayor of London?
I hope so, but I think I would bring a very different style to the mayoralty than either of those. Like I've said, it shouldn't all be about one person come to save us all. It's about helping people to help themselves, giving them the power to do that.
And you don't think power to the people has a certain kind of tone about it that lends it to
we say giving London
Ealing comedy or some type of cartoon joke. Do you think
we
it's
say
still
giving
okay?
London back to Londoners? That's what we're actually
giving
saying.
London back to Londoners. Well, thank you so much for coming in. It's been lovely to see you. Sian Berry there, the Green Party's candidate for London Mayor. And coming up after the news headlines, we're going to talk to Morwenna Banks. Her movie opens tonight. She wrote it.